How many people from your community fail to speak English?
How many people?
From the West Indian community don't speak English.
We all speak English, but actually so do most Indian Muslims, so do pretty much all Pakistani Muslims in this country.
I can take you to streets in Oldham where virtually no one speaks English.
I've been there too, but honestly, come on.
The point I'm making is this.
Seriously.
I am not here to attack the religion of Islam, but I am here...
Well, you've just been doing it for 3 minutes.
No, I haven't. I'm telling you the alarming figures that have been coming out of these recent polls, particularly in the wake of what has happened on October the 7th and in Gaza, and we have a real problem here. We want...
All right.
I mean, firstly, all right, numbers on immigration need to be sensible, otherwise everyone's quality of life gets diminished.
Nigel Farage is a name that often ignites debate. Known for his outspoken views on various issues, Farage has also made headlines with his vocal opposition to radical Islam. This video will explore his arguments, the evidence he presents, and the broader implications for Europe. Our goal is to offer a thorough analysis, presenting facts, opinions, and counter-arguments to better understand this intricate issue. Nigel Farage is a prominent British politician. Known for his role in advocating for Brexit, Farage has also garnered attention for his critical stance on radical Islam. His career has been marked by both significant achievements and controversies.
Why has the vetting failed? Let me take you to a candidate called Steve Chilcott.
Never heard of him.
Standing in London.
Never heard
Islam
of him.
And Nazis are the same thing. Sean Matthews, standing in the seat in Lincolnshire, talking about children having their penises chopped off. If we come back to Hitler references, I could go through so many of your candidates.
Well, I'm sorry. Hang on a second. I think
Jake Fraser.
I think people being alarmed about sex conversion therapy for children. I mean, you think you'll find that's quite a big majority view, actually.
Let's come back.
I bet most of your listeners are worried about it. I bet you.
Jake Fraser in Cheshire. The British
Never
public
heard
is
of
like. There's a health holocaust, is what COVID was. John Edwards, who's standing in one of the Southampton seats. Vaccine producers are like Nazi armament companies. I could go on and on and on.
Well, these are, do you know what?
Your image is carefully honed.
Do you know what?
Your army behind you.
I've never honed an image in my life. I'm who I am. I've never pretended to be anything different to what I am.
These are
they're ordinary people. That's how people out there speak. That's how they feel.
Ordinary people,
they
Mr.
express
Farage, say
on
Islam
Facebook.
and Nazis are the same thing.
Well, I can tell you something.
Go on. They both want
Churchill,
to kill Jews.
No, stop. Do you know why Churchill in 1933 was almost the only person to see Hitler as a threat? Because he'd seen it with fanatical Islam when he fought against it in the 1890s. Now, we've moved on, we're 80 years on, but people are allowed to have opinions. People are allowed to express views.
You're not supporting the idea that Islam and Nazis. Just to clarify there, Mr. Farage.
No, I'm scared of all fanaticisms.
You're equally scared of Islam as you would
No.
be...
No. You're making a very big mistake.
I'm asking you.
I'm not talking about Islam.
Okay.
At all. In fact...
But your candidate is. Islam and Nazis are the same thing.
A very prominent...
They both want to kill Jews. They both hate homosexuals.
A very prominent businessman who happens to be a follower of Islam has joined our party this week. I'll be unveiling him next week. The vast majority of moderate Muslims in this country agree with similar principles to you and me. What is worrying is Islamism, extremism. And I tell you what, most Islamic people would agree with that statement.
OK, lastly on this, you have one candidate, Ian Gibbins, who seems to have totally the contrary view as you to concerns Winston Churchill. It would have been far better if Britain had taken Hitler up on his offer of neutrality.
Well, that's what most of the cabinet thought in 1939, 40.
Well, can we talk about 2024?
Well, yeah, I think the Daily Mail thought that quite strongly at the time.
Can we talk about...
It's a blooming stupid thing to say, and no question.
Is he going to be disciplined?
What can you do? His name's on the ballot. His name's on the ballot paper. I can't remove it.
Have you gone raving mad?
I've got more time to spend than to talk to someone like that.
Farage argues that radical Islam poses a serious threat to European values and security. He has written extensively and appeared in numerous interviews to highlight what he perceives as a growing menace. Supporters view him as a fearless advocate exposing uncomfortable truths, while critics accuse him of fostering division and prejudice. Farage's primary argument revolves around the idea that radical Islam is encroaching upon Europe. He identifies several areas of concern. Farage frequently points to terrorist attacks perpetrated by Islamist extremists in Europe. He contends that these attacks are not isolated incidents, but part of a larger trend of radicalisation. Farage claims that Sharia law is being implemented in certain European regions, undermining national legal systems. He cites examples of Sharia courts and instances where Islamic law appears to influence local communities. Farage argues that there is a fundamental clash between Islamic and Western values. He believes that critical issues such as women's rights, freedom of speech, and secular governance are under threat.
Now, we debated earlier the fact that many Jewish people in Britain feel they're being discriminated against. It was rather backed up by the behaviour, I think, of Border Force at Manchester Airport, and British foreign policy has shifted. Have we betrayed Israel? Well, I'm joined by the co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative, Abdullah Al-Andalusi, who's back on the programme. Do you understand why Jewish people in this country are beginning to feel threatened and very uncomfortable?
Well, I can't speak to people's internal mental states, but many Jewish people have told me that there's a propaganda that's incited by Israel, that Jews should not feel safe in the presence of people merely calling for the rights of Palestinians, that somehow the rights of Palestinians are inimical to Jewish nationhood, which is not true.
Isn't it?
No, it's not. Of course, what the rights of Palestinians is inimical to
okay, let's just get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
So, would you recognise that, and we can argue about the borders, but would you recognise that the state of Israel should exist?
No states have a right to exist. People have a right to exist. States are imagination, are things we imagine in our minds. Are mental constructs. They don't have a physical reality.
Well, normally they do.
Humans have a physical reality.
They have mountain ranges. We're an island. So very often geography is a part of this too.
You're talking about the Earth's crust, right? And the Earth's crust exists indeed, and lands exist. But people exist physically, and people have a right to exist, whether they're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Palestinian, Arab, or whomever. And that is what this is all about. It's about the Palestinians' right to exist.
Israel exists
with dignity and equal rights.
Israel exists as a state. Does it have a right to exist?
As I said before, no state has a right to exist. Right. Only people have a right to exist.
That's not really an answer, is it?
No, it is an answer, because if Israel is a state, it falls within the subset of states. If I'm saying that nation-states don't have a right to exist, people have a right to exist.
I don't agree with that at all. People form together in nation-states. The Jewish people have formed together and I understand, complex history over 2,000 years and all the rest. I mean, the point is this, Abdullah, that, from the river to the sea, that was put up on the Elizabeth Tower, that's been chanted on marches weekend after weekend, even the kindest interpretation of that is that it is about the abolition of the current state of Israel.
Well, look, we were all about the abolition of the state of South Africa as an apartheid state, changing it into an inclusive state.
Which it is. So
now it is, yeah. But before, Margaret Thatcher and the Tories were all against that. So if you're saying to me that should we be against Israel is currently formed as an ethno-nationalist state, privileging one ethnic group, one group of Semites over other Semites, then I think this should change. All Semites in the land of Palestine, be they Palestinian Arabs or Jews, should at the very minimum have an equal dignity, equal tolerance, equal rights, and equal freedom to go about. The Likud party, why don't you condemn the Likud party, who's one of their formal statements.
Farage has highlighted the issue of grooming gangs in the UK, asserting that they are predominantly composed of Muslim men. He argues that political correctness and a fear of being labelled racist have allowed these crimes to persist. Farage uses data on the frequency of terrorist attacks in Europe, the identities of the perpetrators, and their backgrounds. He highlights notable cases such as the Paris attacks and the Manchester bombing. Farage draws on news articles and investigative reports to support his claims about Sharia law and grooming gangs. He points to media coverage of these issues, suggesting that it validates his perspective. Farage features interviews with individuals who have experienced or witnessed the effects of radical Islam. These testimonies are intended to provide a personal dimension to his arguments. Although Farage's supporters believe he is addressing crucial issues, he faces substantial criticism.
The faith of Islam, peacefully practiced by millions of our fellow citizens, is emphatically not the same thing as the extremist political ideology of Islamism, which aims to separate Muslims from the rest of society. Islamist extremists and far-right groups are spreading a poison. That poison is extremism. In recent weeks and months, we have seen a shocking increase in extremist disruption and criminality. What started as protests on our streets has descended into intimidation, threats, and planned acts of violence. Jewish children fearful to wear their school uniform lest it reveal their identity. Muslim women abused in the street for the actions of a terrorist group they have no connection with. Now our democracy itself is a target. Council meetings and local events have been stormed. MPs do not feel safe in their homes. Long-standing parliamentary conventions have been upended because of safety concerns. And it is beyond alarming that last night the Rochdale by-election returned a candidate who dismisses the horror of what happened on October the 7th, who glorifies Hezbollah and is endorsed by Nick Griffin, the racist former leader of the BNP. I need to speak to you all this evening because this situation has gone on long enough and demands a response not just from government, but from all of us. There are forces here at home trying to tear us apart. Since October the 7th, there have been those trying to take advantage of the very human angst that we all feel about the terrible suffering that war brings to the innocent, to women and children, to advance a divisive, hateful ideological agenda. On too many occasions recently, our streets have been hijacked by small groups.
Critics argue that Farage spreads hatred and fear against Muslims. They claim that he generalises the actions of a minority to an entire religion, promoting division and prejudice. Farage's approach, including his confrontational style and selective use of evidence, is often scrutinised. Some argue that he cherry-picks data and sensationalises incidents to fit his narrative. Farage's controversial tactics and his role in promoting divisive rhetoric have also been criticised. Some believe these actions undermine his credibility and detract from any legitimate concerns he raises. The debate surrounding radical Islam and figures like Nigel Farage has broader implications for Europe. Farage's concerns have influenced discussions on immigration. Some advocate for stricter controls to prevent radical elements from entering Europe. The integration of Muslim communities into European societies remains a contentious issue. Farage's arguments highlight the difficulties and tensions that can arise in multicultural settings.
Now to the man who could be more responsible than any other individual for putting Sir Keir Starmer into Downing Street. Good morning,
You've got
Mr.
to
Farage.
laugh, haven't you? You've got to laugh, Trevor. You follow this narrative that all the media follow. Let's get it straight. We've had 14 years of Conservative government, a mega majority in 2019, which I significantly helped them to obtain. Millions of those voters...
I've made that point this morning, by the way.
...utterly betrayed. If I'd stayed at home, if I'd gone to the Bahamas fishing for the month, Keir Starmer would have won a big majority anyway. And many of our voters, if they're polled and spoken to, if we weren't here, wouldn't vote for anybody.
Is there any chance I could ask you a question?
Go on then.
Right. Let's start with the unambiguously racist remarks made by one of your own volunteers, Andrew Parker. Now, you said this is a setup.
I know it is.
Do you have a single shred of proof?
Well, I'll tell you who he is. He's an actor, okay, number one.
All sorts of people are actors. That's not proof that this was a setup. Have you got any proof?
He's an actor with a rather well-spoken actor, but he has an alter ego. He does what he calls rough speaking, all right? I was there working in the office in Essex when he turned up, and he was, from the moment he walked through the room, like a version of Alf Garnett. Now, I didn't know this was an act. It was an act from the start to the end. He spent time with the two Channel 4 undercover reporters in the office. In fact, he spent most of the morning with them. He then said, I've got a big car. He took canvassers out with Channel 4 in the car with him. He tried to get our canvassers to say nasty racist things, which of course they did not. And then he comes out with this, and literally Alf Garnett stream, including all mosques should be turned into Wetherspoons. This was an act from start to finish. It was a deliberate attempt to derail our campaign.
I've let you explain yourself. There's a number of things in that. There's not actually anything in that that says that you know that this was a setup. But what I think is even more interesting is...
Well, hang on.
Let me finish my question. You just said the guy came in and he was a walking Alf Garnett.
In accent terms.
Yeah.
In accent term. He didn't say anything offensive to me at all. It was only when he got a couple of our canvases in the car with Channel 4 filming that he tried to provoke them. He also, by the way, specialises, his services online include undercover filming.
But you still don't have any proof that actually he wasn't genuinely a guy who decided he wanted to support.
Well, if you wanted to support us, why not come as the person you really are? Why come using your false acting voice?
Quite a lot of the people who support you come as they really are. There's the guy who described gay people as degenerates. The one who talked about using migrants in small boats as target practice.
Well, that's the same guy.
People who reposted anti-Semitic comments.
That's the same guy. Well, hang on.
How many of you had to disown so far?
A few. I inherited...
What's a few? 2, 6,
no,
100?
Perhaps a dozen, something like that. Look, Trevor, you know me well enough. We've known each other 20 years. You know that I fought harder than anyone to drive the BNP out as an electoral force, and I did so with
I've got a bone to pick with you about that, but we'll come back to that later.
Success. When I ran UKIP for all those years, and when I set the Brexit Party up, didn't allow anybody to even be a member who'd been part of one of those groups.
Farage's case raises questions about the balance between free speech and hate speech. It is crucial to determine where legitimate criticism of a religion ends and incitement of hatred begins. Nigel Farage's views on radical Islam are undoubtedly polarizing. Whether seen as a champion of truth or a promoter of divisiveness, his impact on the debate about Islam in Europe is significant. This video has aimed to present his perspectives, the evidence he provides, and the criticisms he encounters, offering a comprehensive look at a complex and contentious issue. The threat of radical Islam, as highlighted by Farage, remains a critical topic for Europe, necessitating careful examination and informed discussion. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and for more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel.